Oblivion Remaster, Master Mode Skill Tier List 2.0. Let's just get into it. So, where are the skills at after 150 hours playtime in only Master Mode and doing at least 5 to 6 builds? I would say like 5 if you count finished builds that are good, 6 if you count the one failed build I made. So I'm going to be ranking these in terms of like how good they are in builds, if they should be major skills, or if you should use them and why you should use them. So the first skill we have is Acrobatics. I think Acrobatics is C tier as a major skill or in general. It's something that you want to level to 50 because then you can jump for like low fatigue cost, and it's nice to reposition and to jump on top of things. But there are a lot of situations where it just simply cannot be used. If you're in like a low ceiling area, if you're in like a hallway where there's nothing to jump on top of, there are instances where it literally doesn't do anything. But if you're in an open area, for the most part, it can be used. You can also use it to like speed run certain Oblivion gates if you get it up high enough, which is kind of nice. But outside of that, it doesn't like break the game. It doesn't really help you. It doesn't help you win fights directly. It helps you avoid enemies. So if you're like a glass cannon build, whether that be an archer or a mage, you can get away a little bit easier. Some of the enemies are quite fast, so being able to jump on top of things can basically win you a fight against enemies that lack range attacks, but most of the big threats in the game have range attacks. So it's not going to really win you the fights that matter. It's going to win you easy fights that you could win either way. Next, we have Alchemy. Alchemy, I do think belongs in S tier. Originally, I put it in A tier for general use, but then S tier. I considered it S tier if you like ran it to its fullest. Essentially, what it does is if you max it out, you can make a ton of potions that have really powerful effects and basically give you a huge edge in combat, so you can run it for the poisons. The only downside to the poisons is in order to deal poison damage to things that are immune to poison, you have to use destruction to then allow you to kill those enemies. So for that reason, I don't think it's like high S tier. Now, it does have other ways of breaking the game if you get all the ingredients to do so. I think my issue with Alchemy is that early on, it's not so fun for me to level. Maybe it's fun for you, maybe you enjoy it. But I don't like carrying all these things, getting all these ingredients, constantly opening up my inventory to make potions, and then rotating through potions and using them a ton. I don't find that gameplay loop very exciting. I like to have all of my gameplay happen during gameplay. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to... If I'm playing Oblivion, I don't want to be stuck in menus for like 30 minutes or whatever. So if I can avoid it, I will. But that doesn't mean the effects of Alchemy are bad. Poison damage ignores difficulty, so it's actually extremely potent. But if you just run Alchemy with Destruction, it's easily S tier. If you use it for like attribute fortification and stuff like this, or like spell reflect or damage reflect, it can pretty much do everything. You can always have like potions resetting your stats. The big downside to it though is in order to maintain its effectiveness, you constantly have to be getting ingredients and creating potions. One of the big advantages of spells are that once you have the spell, you just cast the spell. And as long as you have Magicka, the spell is always available. You can always use it. The big problem with Alchemy, though, is if you run out of potions that are critical to your build might stop functioning. So you have to have, if you're good with planning, if you're good with inventory management, if you're good with resource management, it's a great skill. It's definitely like one of the best in the game for sure. But the reason I put it in A last time was because you kind of have to do all these extra things that I feel like are just overkill. Personally, and then also the big downside of poison immune enemies, and it needs bailed out by destruction to do anything to them. So like if you want to use it for killing things, it needs destruction still. Alteration, I think, is easy A tier. It's really good for hitting armor cap. If you're on a tank, you're not going to start out at armor cap. You're going to be like 20 to 30 armor rating. So you want Alteration to get you to armor cap if you're on a tank build, or if you just want to tank damage. You can also cast it on summons so that they can tank physical damage. So if you want your summons to live longer and take on more enemies, you can do this. It also has opening locks, which is nice. I know the skeleton key is in the game, but if you're leveling Alteration anyways, it's not that hard to get it to 100 and then have open very hard lock. And then once you have that, you can always open a chest, which is kind of nice. The other thing that's huge is the ease burden, or the feather effects. So feather actually undoes the weight of your equipment, essentially. So if you have like heavy armor that weighs like 100 and you cast feather 100, your heavy armor basically becomes weightless, or it reduces the speed reduction of that heavy armor. So it's really good with heavy armor. So heavy armor early slows you down, but alteration bypasses that. There's also things like the spell Beast of Burden, which straight up gives you 250 feather for 360 seconds, which cannot even be custom made. So you actually have to buy that spell and cast it. But that is a huge carry weight increase that will allow you to loot a ton of things. And that is very nice for like early to middle game, when money is kind of hard to come by. Money starts rolling in once you hit level 20 pretty consistently. But before then, having the extra carry weight is really huge value. So carry weight, shield, it does other things as well, but those are the main uses I can think of. Armor, I think, is also A tier. It helps you hit armor cap when you hit 75 armor. You can power level it by breaking armor through like disintegrate armor, just letting enemies attack you and then constantly repairing it and stuff like this. But once it hits 75, you can forge things to 125 durability, which improves their effectiveness. It makes all of your weapons deal more damage. Bows, daggers, axes, swords, any physical weapon can get its damage improved. And it also improves your armor's effectiveness so that as you're tanking, your armor has higher effective armor rating, which is very nice. But it's really good. It's also almost required if you're running armor or weapons. And the fact that it also gives you more damage is nice too. Now, is that damage like super huge? Depends on the build. If you're doing like a stealth build, getting like 2 or 3 points of damage, you know, if it's like an 8 times multiplier, is actually a lot. So it does depend on the build. But if you're also just like an archer, if you're just like shooting things with arrows constantly, your bow dealing 3 or 4 more damage is a pretty huge impact, and it does do a lot. So I do think it is pretty nice to have. And you also kind of need it for most builds. So it's also like literally something you need for like running equipment. Next we have athletics. I think athletics is low A tier. Moving faster is good, it turns out. And just by moving faster, you can dodge enemy projectiles, you can dodge arrows with like correct movement. Essentially what you have to do is like bait the enemies, like say you're like moving to the left and then the enemy shoots, then you move to the right as soon as they shoot. Because once they've shot, they're going to track your velocity and then they're going to shoot where you will be like the distance out. So if it's shooting like 0.5 seconds away, it'll be shooting where you will end up in 0.5 seconds as you're moving to the left. The enemy AI does not read your mind or try to like predict where you're going to move. They just they do an automatic calculation based on how you're moving currently. So you can combine jumping, you can combine like fake out jukes to avoid attacks. So you can avoid fireballs, all spells, you can avoid arrows. You can also just use movement to avoid melee attacks to get out of range of melee attacks. But movement is really good, and I think athletics is good in pretty much most builds as like your 6th or 7th major skill, just to move faster. It also levels slow, so if you want to start off with like a huge increase to movement speed, arguably this is one of the better skills for every build. You just move faster. It's kind of hard to debate that that's good or not, or that that's bad. So Blade. Blade I'm going to put in low A tier. So Blade as a skill, like if you were to run Blade for damage, with Umbra and 75 armor, 100 strength, 100 blade, with the 30% weakness on power attack, master perk, you can actually deal pretty decent per hit damage and power attack damage with high base damage weapons. So it is still pretty good. It's like the only way to ramp physical damage as far as I know. So like if you want to increase your physical damage with even like a bow or anything that's just like a physical weapon, Blade has weakness to normal weapons 30% for 10 seconds on the master mode perk, which is huge. Now I don't think it stacks, and I think it might actually be able to be ramped with destruction magic. I haven't done extensive testing yet, and I'm still waiting on someone to make a mod that shows damage numbers so that I can see exactly how much damage things are taking, which would be so helpful, because reading health bars is like, you know, not as clear as just like a number. But from what I can tell, the 30% does add up to a lot. And if you keep spamming power attacks to maintain that effect, it also boosts your basic hit damage. So it can ramp itself. It can be decent on its own, but you usually want to enchant your sword anyways. And I do believe the physical aspect of the sword still gets ramped, but then the enchantments get ramped by something else, like a destruction ramp. But Blade is pretty good. I think it's solid. If you want to run it as your main source of damage, you still want enchantments long term, but it's still good for like levels 1 through 20, and then like level 20 plus enemies start getting huge health values, and it starts to not really fall off, but they're just like, they just start to get too much health is the issue. Block has some interesting things. I think block is low A tier. Now there is a thing right now that block can do where if you fortify your strength to like 700 plus, which is not easy to achieve without a lot of specific things, you can one-shot with the shield bash with 100 block, from what I understand. I haven't really tested it too much. I've heard about it. I've seen a video on it. This might require alchemy or high restoration and casting a bunch of spells that fortify your strength. Either way, the easiest way to achieve it would be through alchemy, but then you're potentially using a consumable resource that you might not be able to get like hundreds of. Because if I need to pop like, I don't know, 5 or 6 potions to one-shot with my block attack, that's a lot of resources. Like every single one of those potions is like 1 to 2 ingredients minimum. And in order to get all those ingredients, I might have to like constantly go to different vendors, wait for the day to pass, buy all their stock, wait for the day to pass, or like, you actually might have to wait for like 3 days to reset their stock. I know for dungeons, it's 72 hours. I don't know what vendors are. I think it also is 72 hours. But that's like a lot of boring downtime to just get your shield one-shotting when destruction can do it much easier. And other things are just effective without all this crap. So it's like, in theory, it's really strong, but can you realistically have like 100 plus potions constantly to like spam to get your strength up? The best thing you can do is get like sigil stones that improve strength by 12 to get your passive strength like 200, and then maybe cast like restoration ramp to get your strength up from there. So you'd have to have like at least like 4 to 5 spells hotkeyed that improve strength by 100. Wait for regen or use like honestly, it's like a wreck, but just for like blocking, it's good. Shield bash is decent for interrupt. Timing your blocks so that you block enemy attacks and stagger them is good for general combat. It's good on mages even, so you can like quickly tank a hit instead of dying. That's really good. Even if your block is like 30 and you have no armor, blocking like a huge attack usually does reduce the damage by a substantial amount. So it's still valuable just for that. Blunt. I'm going to put blunt in B tier, but it might even be in C. It seems to be quite weak right now. It's not bad. From what I understand, like it's like it can ramp your shield. It can ramp your shield. It has a 20% chance to silence at 75 rank, and then it gives you 30% more shield at master, which really doesn't help you because by the time you have 100 blunt, you're probably gonna have 100 heavy armor and be at armor cap anyways. So the advantage blunt gives you of like this huge armor scaling literally doesn't matter if you're at armor cap for light or heavy armor, which both can easily hit armor cap with 75 armor. So that passive is borderline useless. Silence, 20% chance, doesn't improve your damage. It does help you shut down, but there's better ways of shutting things down. The best way is killing them. Best way is killing them. But it attacks slower on average versus Blade. It doesn't have a super fast weapon. Blade has short swords and it has daggers. Daggers are the fastest attacking wieldable weapon in the game. Blunt doesn't have an equivalence, and its average attack speed is much lower, and its damage is not really that much higher. So unfortunately, it's just worse than Blade in almost every way. I feel like it should have like built-in armor ignore, because that's how like blunt weapons were used historically. Like a mace would puncture through armor, so it'd be kind of logical if it had like 50% armor ignore at rank 50, and then 100% armor ignore at rank 100, and then maybe it also deals bonus damage to I don't know, unarmored enemies or something. It needs some kind of way of ramping damage also, because like Blade ramps its own damage and also has bleed. Blunt just makes you tankier in a game where you can easily hit armor cap. So unfortunately, its passives don't really help. Conjuration, I do think, is better than Alchemy. Unlike Alchemy, which requires a lot of maintenance, a lot of shopping, and a lot of waiting, and a lot of collecting resources, Conjuration just works. You literally just summon a thing, and then it wins fights for you. And the other thing, too, that's great about Conjuration is you can summon a thing and soul trap it, and you can soul trap it in Azura Star. You can soul trap Grand Souls, and then enchant weapons with that. You can recharge weapons with that. In between fights, you can recharge weapons. Just for recharging weapons, I would put it in S tier, because enchanted weapons are like one of the best things in the game right now. So just the fact that it can keep all of your enchanted weapons topped off alone puts it in S. But the fact that it has all these huge summons that do big damage, you can use whatever summon you need for the time. that's required. I am about to do a summon tier list. After I do a summon review video, I'm going to cast every single summon, have them fight the same group of enemies, have them fight like 2 to 3 different groups of enemies, see how they do while I'm invisible, just to see like what the summon can do at level 25. But summons are really strong. Worst case scenario, they waste enemy resources, they damage enemies and then die. Worst case scenario. They also can be used to body block. You cast a big summon in a narrow hallway, you're literally safe until the summon dies, and if the summon is tanky enough, it can just win fights for you. Also, their damage is not reduced by master mode, so very often if you summon a huge damage summon, and it runs up to like an enemy mage and just whacks it, it'll just start one-shotting things. So huge damage. Also, you can cast buffs on your summons and heal them. So you could throw like shield and magic resist on your summon and then have it tank several enemies and easily win fights in master mode, and it's just completely broken. So pretty huge value. The big advantage it has over alchemy is that it does not increase your carry weight because you have to carry all these alchemy supplies and ingredients and potions, and it's always available as long as you have magicka, and it wins fights for you. And there's no counter to it unless you get silenced, which is a skill issue because you can avoid those. You can avoid getting silenced, just don't get hit by the projectiles from ghosts and the gnarl barks or whatever the hell. Destruction, I think, is also S tier. Is it better or worse than Conjuration? I think it's a little bit better. Destruction does everything. Just on its own, it beats the game. It damage ramps itself. You can kill with any of the elements. You can kill with just straight up magic damage and ramp that. But the elemental combos are definitely the best. It gives you access to weakness to magic, weakness to fire, frost, shock, and poison. It makes alchemy better. It also makes conjuration better. If I use weakness to magic and weakness to lightning, and I have a Storm Atronach, and that Storm Atronach hits an enemy that has weakness to magic and weakness to lightning, that enemy is getting one shot. Because they also, like, first of all, it's a high hitting attack from the Storm Atronach, and the enemy is getting ramped from a thing that is not having its damage reduced by master mode. So if you put destruction debuffs with and like use conjuration, and there's elemental attacks coming from your summon, you're going to be watching your summon just literally one shot massive targets effortlessly all the time. And if you do like a huge AoE debuff that lasts for like 10 to 15 seconds and summon like a thing that has an elemental attack, it'll just start one-shotting things from range. It's insane. It's really strong. Even summons that suck. Like I had a build where I had 2 Flame Atronachs just spamming like 20 damage flares or whatever. And I ramped enemies, enemy Daedroths, enemy Storm Atronachs, enemy Zivilize, and they were just getting like 1 to 2 shotted by like a pretty mid-level summon. But also, aside from that, you have huge damage on single targets at touch range and at target range. You have huge AoE capabilities. You have damage ramp on yourself. You can damage ramp enchantments and then kill with enchanted weapons efficiently. If you cast like 3 weakness to fire / like fire, frost, shock with weakness 100, like 3 different spells in a row, and then just tap an enemy with an enchanted sword that does 60 elemental damage of each element. Each element's doing like 20 damage in this case. You will literally like one-shot Zivilize. It's absolutely cracked. I think it's the best form of offense in the game. It complements every single build archetype, because if you're attacking with any weapon that can be enchanted, it can ramp it. If you're using any spell that does any kind of elemental damage, it can ramp it. It makes poison better. If you're running a poison build, it allows you to deal poison damage to enemies that are immune with a cheap spell. I have a spell right now, 100 destruction magic, 10 seconds. It's like 7 or 10 seconds of 100% weakness to poison. Costs you like 7 to 10 magicka. You can literally spam it. You could do an AoE spam on like a huge group and then just start poisoning them and just nuking them down with poison and bypassing immunity. So it literally boosts everything. It's like the ultimate ramp in the game. It's the skill that opens doors for everything, except for hand-to-hand, which is absolute trash. All right, so why is hand-to-hand trash? No ways of really damage ramping it. Maybe you could get 30% more damage off of Master Blade, but then you would be seeing a huge damage decrease by switching to hand-to-hand. There's no like buffs for it. There's no gauntlets. There's no like hand-to-hand damage increase. Its range is limited. It's just like terrible. It just doesn't do anything useful. I've been hearing of people doing Master Mode hand-to-hand runs, and they just tell me how they have to spam Paralyze to keep enemies on the ground while they keep punching them for low damage, and it just sounds terrible. I don't recommend it. Next is Heavy Armor. I think Heavy Armor is high A tier. It easily hits armor cap, and especially when combined with Alteration, you can hit armor cap early before you have good endgame armor. So for like levels 1 to 15, once you get like ebony armor, like a little bit of alteration plus ebony armor at like 50 to 70 heavy armor, you hit armor cap pretty easily. But alteration and heavy armor work together. Alteration can make it way less so that you can run around faster, and you can also use it to hit armor cap. And then once you hit armor cap and you're in like Daedric or Madness or whatever endgame armor you're looking at, you can stop using the alteration for the shield, and then you just have 85% damage reduction at all times. Once you have master heavy armor, it doesn't weigh you down, so then you're just still fast as hell, and also very tanky. So it's good on pretty much any build as long as you run it with alteration. Next we have illusion. I think it's safe to say that illusion is S tier for a few reasons. So even if all it did was give me access to paralyze, which is like paralyze and silence, both of which are really good for like fighting big groups of enemies. Like 1 second paralyze in 15-foot radius, it affects everything except for like Spider Daedra, which aren't really that big of a threat anyways, and Storm Atronachs, which kind of similarly, if you ramp them, they're usually pretty easy to kill. Pretty like an AoE paralyze is usually effective, costs you like 15 to 20 magicka at 100 illusion. Just that on top of like a destruction nuke to keep enemies still while they're dying or getting nuked down or debuffed or whatever is huge value. But the fact that you can 100% chameleon yourself and then break the game just off of that, it definitely deserves a spot in S tier because it literally can break the game. It's not the most fun way to play because enemies cannot respond, they cannot attack you, they cannot target you when you're 100% chameleon. All they can really do is just like say how they're paranoid as they're dying, which is weird. But just that breaks the game. There's other things too. It has other effects. If you cast the level 25 manipulate spells like Calm and Frenzy and stuff like this, if you have 95% spell effectiveness, they will fail on enemies above level 25. But if you have robes on, if you're 100% spell effectiveness, illusion spells can completely manipulate and control enemies, which is also overpowered. So if you're running like a kind of like clothes build, maybe just like robes and like a weapon or whatever, you can just throw whatever debuff or effect you want on an enemy. You can also make yourself invisible. Invisibility makes you basically impossible to detect until you break it. 100% chameleon does that. It does a little bit of everything. It is definitely more or less game breaking. And it can win fights if there's multiple enemies with things like Frenzy. Demoralize is also pretty strong. Enemies just refuse to fight you, so you can just hit them for free. So you could run like an illusion plus sword thing where you like demoralize something. And this is assuming you're in robes. Demoralize and just keep hitting them until they die, or whatever you want to do to kill them. But still, the paralyze is good. The silence is good. The other effects are good. Chameleon breaks the game. It deserves to be an S tier for that. Light armor, I'll put light armor in high B tier. I think light armor is good for just having something, some kind of armor on like an avoidant build that's not trying to tank. Most people consider it to be worse than heavy armor. I kind of agree. The main reason why it's worse than heavy armor is on master mode, damage is intense, like it's really high. So the difference between like 20% armor rating and 50 is massive. And the main difference though is the faster you can get to armor cap, the better. And unfortunately, you have to get 100 light armor before you hit armor cap with the armor itself. But if you combine it with alteration, you can get pretty good armor ratings. But if you combine heavy armor with alteration, the feather effect basically makes it light armor. So then you're just looking at better base armor plus higher, stacking for less magic cost. So I do think that heavy armor is a little bit better in that way. One of the advantages of light armor, though, is heavy armor has huge weight, to no one's surprise, and light armor is very lightweight. So, for example, a full set of light armor might only be like 20 or 25 weight, whereas a full set of heavy armor with the shield might be like 100. So for early game, it's rough. Heavy armor can be rough, but once you get to like level 10, you start getting your alteration going, you get your heavy armor up, they basically end up being the same. So like in terms of end game potential, they're identical. The armor value is the same and the movement speed is the same, but for the early to middle game is where you will notice a huge difference. However, one advantage of light armor is that you don't need alteration. So another way to look at light armor is you have some armor for when you do get hit, but you move faster innately without needing alteration. So if you just want a little bit of protection and you want to level it like occasionally, maybe get like to 20 to 40% armor rating while assuming you're trying to avoid getting hit. It's nice for a little bit of protection that doesn't slow you down. Whereas with heavy armor, if you're not using alteration and you need your magicka for something else, you can't really, like, you kind of need to run these together for the most part. You don't have to, but moving slow in master mode can get you killed. So that's like a huge problem with heavy armor. But when used with alteration, it's definitely better than just light armor with alteration. There's less synergy. And also the lower armor rating is not as good. But it is nice for the innate speed and the fact that the armor you're wearing weighs less. So that means more carry weights, more selling stuff. And that's arguably something that only matters in early game, and in late game it no longer becomes an issue. All right, Marksman. I think Marksman deserves a spot in low S tier. I think overall it's really strong with Stealth Archer build. Assuming you're running Chameleon or just using distance, you can get multiple 8 times attacks as you attack an enemy from far away, even with just like 100 sneak. Essentially what happens is it'll look like you're revealed, but if the enemy is like approaching you, there's still a decent chance they haven't spotted you yet. Essentially how this game works is you hit an enemy in stealth mode, they automatically pass towards you. That doesn't mean they've discovered you though, which is really confusing because you would think they know exactly where you are. They do. They're hard-coded to travel to your position, but that doesn't mean they've discovered you yet. So if you're sniping from far away and you don't have any chameleon or invisibility and you're high sneak and you're really far away, you can usually get in a few, like 3 times shots in, but if you switch to a dagger, you can get 8 times in. So just that is good, but also Arcane Archer is pretty good using Poison Archer. So Poison Archer and ramped Chaos Nuke Archer, like a bunch of destruction spells or destruction effects on your bow are quite strong, and I do think are like pretty good. The nice thing about archery is if you want to use destruction with it, if you cast the debuffs at range, you can then use your bow to deliver the damage, which allows you to conserve on magicka. Because huge AoE nukes at range cost a lot of magicka, so you can kind of cast 2 debuffs and then just start shooting like nuke arrows, which is pretty good. I've been running a build on it. It basically just like wins fights easily, outside of like 2 bad matchups, but we'll get into that. Mercantile, low C tier. It's nice. It's nice to have. If you have an extra slot and you want to ramp your economy early, it can be kind of nice, but honestly, like if you just go to Robber's Glen Cave and just farm it every so often, like 3 to 4 times before you hit level 10 periodically, like immediately go there, do a farm, collect items, sell it at like level 3 to 5, do it again. Just do it like 3 to 4 times. You'll make enough money. It's making money in this game is not hard. Once you hit level 20, you kill like 5 bandits, you get like 3 sets of full Daedric. It's kind of ridiculous, actually. I feel like only the bandit leaders should have a small % chance of rolling Daedric. It's weird how all of a sudden they're like decked out in like enchanted glass armor and like, you know, enchanted arrows and Daedric bows, and it's like, how the hell do these bandits are rich, dude? Like, why are they even bandits anymore? Just go retire. Like, you're sitting on like 50k in gear and you're robbing people. But anyways, it doesn't matter. You don't need it. It's nice to have, but it doesn't help you win because you can easily make money through a variety of different ways. You can just join Mages Guild, sell all their alchemy stuff back to them. Each Mages Guild makes you like 1k. That can get you like 4 to 5k starting cash immediately. And then from there, you're set. Like, you can just go, you know, buy some starting supplies, get some spells, start power leveling your magic skills, and then, you know, buy your like master spells, and then you're good to go. Like, it really doesn't take that much to get a build going. Mysticism. So Mysticism, I'm going to put it in high B tier. I don't think this wins you fights. The biggest effect from it is like Spell Reflect for like winning fights. But Spell Reflect is kind of situational. First of all, the enemies you have to be fighting have to be throwing huge spells at you that also deal big damage in order for that to convert to kills on flip. But also, there's faster and better ways to kill. Casting Spell Reflect, I don't really think is the best idea. You could do it, but it costs quite a bit of magicka to do. The main thing I use it for is Soul Trap. It has other things like Detect Life, but mostly if I'm going to level Mysticism, I'm going to level it to 100 for Soul Trap on a spell, so that when I cast a spell on something and then I expect to kill it shortly afterwards, my Soul Trap aspect of that spell is cheaper. When you make big spells that have effects from different schools of magic, the cost of those effects scale based on your magic level of that particular skill. So if I'm like 5 destruction and I add like a bunch of fire damage to like a healing spell, like let's say I have a spell that's like heal 20 health on self, and then do 20 damage on touch or whatever. You can make spells like this. The heal aspect will use the restoration, calculate that, and then it'll add it to the destruction calculation of that destruction effect. So if I'm 100 destruction, 100 restoration, the spell will be cheaper than if I was 100 restoration, 5 destruction, because it has a destruction element. So if you add Soul Trap to a spell, if your mysticism is like 25, which I think is the minimum for Soul Trap, the Soul Trap could cost you like 30 magicka. But if it was 100, it could cost like 5 or 3. So you usually want to get it higher for efficiency's sake, but that's really the only major use case. Also, just it's really a utility thing. It's utility for, soul trapping, which is good to have if your weapon, like let's say you have like Umbra and your weapons out of charges, you only have a 0-star, you don't have soul gems. What you can do is you can like summon something, soul trap it with a spell, and then kill and then start recharging, summon something, or even just soul trap an enemy that you can soul trap into like a 0-star or a gem from a spell. It's always good to have as like a panic button for when you run out of charges and you run out of soul gem uses, even with the 0-star. That's happened to me before, so it's nice to be able to summon something, soul trap it, kill it, reset your shit. But it doesn't break the game. There's other ways to get the effect. Restoration. So restoration. Where do we want to put this? I think it's at least A, possibly low S. I think it's safe to say it's low S. So why low S tier? So ramping is still really good. Just giving yourself 100 willpower twice and then like fortify magicka 100, giving yourself 200 more magicka and then 200 more willpower. Just that will give you a huge mana pool. Like if you're 300 mana, now you're 500. And then it also gives you huge regen. The difference between 100 willpower and 200 is insane. And the difference between 100 and 300 or 400 is even more ridiculous. If you're like 300, 400 willpower, you regenerate magicka so fast that you don't even need to really consider using like potions or anything like that, because you're just constantly regenning magicka super quickly. And it honestly is a really good thing to have these like ramps for like a pure magic build, because you can run out of magicka potions. Even if you're like some, really well thought out alchemy build, if you just run out of potions, let's say like a dungeon is way longer than you anticipated, or you just did like 2 or 3 dungeons in a row and you just simply ran out of resources, restoration doesn't run out. Like you just throw huge buffs on yourself that can ramp your skills and your attributes, and then you can just go to town. It also can heal you. It could also restore stamina. So it's also good for those reasons. The other thing that's nice about it is you can use Absorb Magicka on key targets to profit Magicka on spellcast. So if you use like Absorb Magicka within 15 feet on enemies that have like weakness to magic that's been ramped once or twice, you can take like a 50 Magicka spell, make it cost like 70, but then when you cast it, you'll get like 150 Magicka back, profiting like 80 Magicka if you hit like 2 to 3 targets that have magic base. Certain enemies don't have magicka to absorb, but you can also absorb fatigue, and if their fatigue hits 0, they fall over. So I recently made a build that used restoration nuke and like restoration effects to do this exact thing, and it is actually pretty effective with a basic like weakness to magicka weakness to magic from destruction. But outside of that, ramping is good, and fortify attribute is quite strong. Next is security. I think security is one of the worst skills in the game. All it does is make you better at picking locks, and Skeleton Key completely undermines it, as does Alteration. So there's 2 things that are easy to do and use in the game and to acquire that completely undermine this entire skill. There's also like several lesser and greater powers in the game you can get that open locks for free. So it just sucks. It's not really worth running unless you're doing like role play as like some kind of thief or something. If it did more, if it made it so that you got better loot and made lockpicking easier, that would be interesting. Or maybe if it gave you access to unique loot that can only be acquired through this skill, that might be something. But the fact of the matter is, Alteration makes it redundant, and as does the Skeleton Key. Sneak. So Sneak I am putting in, I think here. We'll say middle of A tier. Sneak is really good with Chameleon. If you run like an illusion sneak build, you can just keep infinitely shooting things with a bow at range, or just in general, or you can just walk up to things with a dagger and just keep 8-timesing them. It gives you more damage the higher it goes, up to like 8 times on dagger. I think it's 5 times on melee weapons and 3 times on others, unless they made all the others 3 times. And the OG, I think it was like 6 times on melee, except for 2-handed, and then 3 times on ranged. I believe that's how it used to work. But at 100 sneak, you also ignore armor on sneak attacks, which is pretty huge value. Sneak can also be good because you can bypass combat. So assuming you don't want to run invisibility or chameleon, if you sneak by enemies, you don't have to fight them. If those enemies have nothing that you want from them and fighting them is going to waste your time, you can just sneak by them. But you're probably not going to be one-shotting things with a single 8 times unless you're on a lower difficulty that's not master mode. But overall, it's still really strong. There's a lot of builds that leverage it that are quite good. And generally, like, you know, Stealth Archer with Dagger Switch is good. Dagger Nuke is good with Chameleon. That easily just like runs through the game like nothing. The crazy thing about Chameleon, though, is you can run around not in sneak mode and enemies still don't know where you are. So you can sprint up to them, crouch, enter sneak mode, and start 8-timesing with a dagger, stand up, run over to another one, and just keep doing that. It's really boring because it's just like almost like you're in God mode, but it does, you know, win. It's really good, strong. Personality. I also think this is a useless skill. It's definitely better than hand-to-hand, though. So personality is used for the personality minigame to raise disposition, which also can be done with illusion magic. You can charm people with illusion magic to make them like you more temporarily. You can even charm them 100 points for 1 second and then talk to them, and when you talk to them, it freezes time and effects, so then they're at max disposition. So it's literally redundant for that reason if you run any illusion, but outside of that, if you don't invest in it at all, you can usually get people to like 60 to 75 disposition, and as you buy and sell items with like certain vendors, their disposition rises and eventually will hit 100 over time anyways. And you can also always bribe them to increase it or splash a little bit of illusion. Like let's say someone's at 70 disposition and you hit them with a charm 30, now they're at 100. So like it's not really, it's basically redundant. Honestly, it's probably worse than hand-to-hand. Hand-to-hand at least is a different way of attacking, and it's like a thing. This is literally just outdone. Like it doesn't matter at all. You can easily hit like 50, usually 60 to 70 disposition with like almost like no personality, as long as you maximize the minigame, and then you can just use illusion to patch up the rest. So unfortunately, it just doesn't do that much. As far as I know, there's not really like unique dialogue options or anything that are huge value. The only real way I could see to make this skill better would be to make it so that having high personality leads to better quest rewards, so that when you have high personality, you have like unique options that open themselves up. Like maybe you could convince someone to be a permanent follower that's an essential NPC, or maybe you could convince someone to part ways with like some family heirloom that can only be done with high personality or something. But the mini game and raising disposition are like 2 easy things to do. You can speedrun disposition by just like rapidly playing the mini game and then just hitting them with an illusion spell, or just hitting them with an illusion spell and bypassing it entirely, which is way easier and nicer to do. But outside of that, it just literally doesn't do anything that's super useful. The only time you do need it is for like certain quests when you have to get people's disposition like over 70 to 80 so that they tell you something, but that can also be achieved with illusion. And you can also just buy like scrolls of illusion or just keep like charm scrolls for those like particular quests. The scrolls themselves aren't really too expensive, and if you ever find them, you can just keep them. And there's also other things too, like fortify personality potions and stuff like this that can then allow you to raise disposition through the minigame even higher. So it just, as a skill, it just doesn't do anything. It's like borderline useless, and I don't recommend running it at all. But here's where I think the skills are. This is actually, honestly, I feel like this is a good thing. Most of the skills are either borderline overpowered or really strong, and only a few of them are just like either utility or just like suboptimal, but still relevant. And the only things that are bad, at least based on this list for master mode, are picking locks, talking to people, punching things, buying and selling things, and jumping. And that's not bad. I think this is a pretty good place. I honestly think the master mode metagame is in a good place overall. Now, you can't just like jump in and just run just blade and be fine. You're gonna have to do more than that. You're gonna have to like splash something, but there's so many things to splash. You can splash absorb, you can splash mind control or paralyze or whatever. You can splash poison, summoning things, ramping. Like all of these things can be used to open up a build in a really huge way. And then a lot of these are like support skills too. So I actually feel pretty good about the meta game if you want to look at it in that way right now. I think it's in a good spot. If you agree or disagree with any of these for Master Mode, you can drop a comment, let me know what you think. And outside of that, definitely like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next one. Peace.